if you were to make a thing, a construct or whatever, what form would you give it? Because you can build it in whatever like form
Yeah.
you want. It doesn't have to be humanoid.
Oh God, that's a good question. I don't know. I would have a little mechanical version of me that's very like clockwork steampunk. Like the
Uh-huh.
eyebrows are like made of bronze and they just go up and down to the two like specific like formations they can make. There's just
hmm
either like surprised or angry and that's it. They, and it would run around and it would just be the most sarcastic fucking thing.
What would you make the beard out of?
Red wires, just like the red coating on wires. Just
hmm
Yeah, that could work. Steel wool would be good too, I think.
oh, that's a good one. Although for
Yeah.
me, it'd have to be rusty
Yeah.
steel. It,
Yeah.
it would just be the whole thing be made of tetanus. So,
God, the idea of a tiny mechanical you running around is terrifying on so many levels.
specifically just the two.
Yeah.
Kyle, what about you? What form would you take?
What would mine take? I don't know, maybe an octopus. So I think that would be kind of fun. It would definitely need to have hands.
I don't know. Tentacles can manipulate things, so like that could work. If you
Yeah.
get little suckers on them too, it could like climb up walls and stick to ceilings and
hmm
be just weird.
Yeah, I feel like I know an octopus could work. I'm just trying to think of like what would be fun. I don't know if I'd want one that looks like myself. I think I would have too much sympathy.
And you just wake up and it'd be standing over top of you.
Yeah.
Like, was mine just an ego trip then? You got me like worried about that.
I mean, fatherhood affects us differently. All
Peps, do we even have to ask you?
I mean, I'm sure you can guess.
Yeah.
I guess for new listeners, it'd be a dragon.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome back to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Today, we're continuing our discussion on constructs in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me today are Pepperina and Kyle, and this episode is called Constructs, Deconstructing the Typical Forms.
In this episode of It's a Mimic, this panel of Dungeon Masters is going to discuss the different kinds of constructs and how each one fits into the landscape of the D&D world you may be adventuring in.
Before we start this episode, I want to address the large chrome elephant in the room. Everyone seems to have a zombie survival plan, but if machines rise up to overthrow humanity, what's your plan?
Let's roll dice.
13.
7.
8.
I'm going to last with a 7. That's shitty.
I lost my survival plan in the divorce.
Like he took your binder, or
He was
Yeah.
a prepper and had almost an entire box truck full of prepping gear and food and go bags and things like that. So that just recently all left my house and I have so much more room. But I no longer have bags of flour that are frozen and will last 30 years or things like that. So I gotta come up with a new plan.
You can't ask for that in the divorce.
no, you
No,
don't
he's
need to be a prepper. This is my hint for everyone. You don't have to be a prepper. You just need to know where the nearest one is and what their weaknesses are.
maybe that's why he's hiding his address from me. But I am like a hunter and that kind of stuff. I do have my own firearms and bow and arrow that I've been shooting since I was in the first or second grade. So I feel like, just on my survival instincts alone, I could last for a while.
Kyle, do you have a
Yeah.
plan for the robot apocalypse?
Die or turn traitor.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
answer as well. 100%. Die or turn traitor. I will not beat Skynet. I could beat zombies.
Yeah.
Skynet's coming for me.
That's the
Yeah.
thing too, like I don't know that I want to survive the apocalypse. It seems really depressing and hard.
Yeah.
Well, and everybody fantasizes about it, but let's be honest. If 99.9% of the world dies off, chances are literally everyone on this podcast, like we don't even make that there's not enough of us. We're all just zombies or fodder at that point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be like living in the Oregon Trail. You have died of dysentery, shit like that.
That's the damn thing about it. Like the robots, you want to wipe out a population, fuck up their sanitation. Here comes disease back. The robots just have to literally be patient.
I don't know. Yeah, like zombies seems like it could be like kind of fun to be in that apocalypse, but I don't know. The robot one, it just I don't know.
And then
I'm not interested.
if we
I
use
think we
Terminator,
would. Oh, sorry.
if we go by Terminator rules and they have to rewrite the timeline every like 20 fucking minutes too, who can keep up with that shit?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I actually have a lot of thoughts about this, but before I ramble, let's cut to a little info break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on monsters in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
As I imagine you have discovered, we have not released new episodes on the public channel in the last 3 weeks or so. This is due to some technical difficulties we've had on the back end. Everyone in the Patreon Discord has heard me complaining about them at this point. But I do want to say that we're back up on track. Things will be running smoothly moving forward, and instead of flooding the channel with daily drops like we normally do, we're going to allow you guys to digest this at a reasonable level because all our episodes are long, and I will be releasing the episodes 2 or 3 a week for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So do expect to see an increase in episodes as we play catch up. Big apologies to everybody for waiting, and even the Patreon will be up and running again. I know that I skipped a couple of things while I was working on this as well, so do expect to see that bonus Golems episode for Silver Tier and above, and the next homebrew episode where I talk about how I've adapted White Plume Mountain and why in my next episode that's dropped on Friday. But before that, there's another campaign builder. So there's lots going on the Patreon this week, and there'll be a couple of episodes on the public channels as we play catch up. Yes, there's more Theros, there's more Undead, and there's more regular episodes coming. So stay tuned, and thanks for your patience. Before we go any further, let's talk about what exactly is a construct, because we did all the like really big colossal ones, the ones that are like towering statues over cities. We've talked about the Merit and the Hellfire Engine. We've done a fuck ton of golems at this point, but there are so many more constructs out there. There are 205 published constructs at the time of this recording, and an additional 30 unique named or NPC construct stat blocks. That is a shit ton of constructs, and I was surprised to see that number. But the thing is, you don't get the full stat block in like a bestiary. You end up getting a little blurb in an adventure that says this statue acts like a gargoyle, and so it counts because it's a statue of a, I don't know, jester or something, right? So, and that's its own unique construct. So I kind of poured through and found as many as I could, decided that there were 205 minimum. Some of them are a little iffy whether or not it's a construct or not, but it doesn't really give you a clear overview of what a construct is. You just have a general understanding of what it says in the monster manual, which is a monster that's defined it's a monster, and a monster is defined by any creature that can be fought and killed. But what do we know about constructs themselves? And there are some basic rules that I managed to cobble together, like the fact that they're made and not born. Some are made from organic material like wood, but some are made from inorganic material like metal, so that doesn't really narrow it down either. Most of them have creators that are more powerful than they are, but they do have a creator. Some of them have sentience, but most don't. Some can only follow simple instructions, but some can do more complex things. Most of them are sexless, but not all of them. As far as I can tell, some of them wear pants, so that's weird. A few of them can actually feel pain or emotion, but not all of them. Some of them have souls and can be found in the afterlife, but some can't. You break a random dragon statue, it's not going to an afterlife. They usually have immunities. They've got the most immunities out of all of the different creature types. Over half of them are immune to poison damage. Over a quarter of them are immune to psychic damage. Over 20% of them are immune to some form of bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Over 8% of them are immune to lightning and or fire. And there are even 5 constructs that are immune to force damage, which is more than anything else, any other creature type. Because force damage is the one that tends to get around shit, not with constructs, not necessarily. What we can guarantee is that most of them have an AC of 17 or higher, which is insane because they're not really high CR for the most part. About 10 of them can cast spells, so mostly you're just dealing with physical attacks. About 6 of them are spells and have a will all of their own, and I'll get into that in a minute. Most don't need to eat, drink, breathe, or sleep, and well over half are immune to exhaustion and the poisoned, conditioned, charmed, frightened, and you're likely to run into some common themes like false appearance on a lot of them that pretend to be statues or whatever. Magic resistance, their attacks are physical, but they act as magical weapons. A lot of them have immutable forms, so you can't like polymorph them or anything. And there are a lot of siege monsters in the mix as well, especially when you get to the higher CR constructs. Over half of all of them in 5th edition are present in tier 1, and a quarter more are present in tier 2. So they are present in all tiers, but you're likely to run into them at low levels. In fact, there are even 7 that range from 21 to 27. So we've got some power hitters, but not a ton of them. Really, anything above a CR10 is going to be a hard fight. So when we look at them, there's some common themes that we will run into that kind of are little umbrella terms used for all of them. Or for like subjects or subsections, I guess, of what a construct is. Like there's a bunch of clockwork creatures. Clockwork constructs are creatures without souls that are essentially machines that follow very simple programming. There are 11 that actually have clockwork in their name, including a clockwork mule, a clockwork dragon, which we covered in the Dragon Constructs episode on the Patreon. And a clockwork kraken, which is wild to me. We've covered both the clockwork dragon and the clockwork horror on the Patreon in the past. So the clockwork horror is just like medium-sized, or maybe they're small-sized, but they're arachnids with buzz saws at the end of a couple of legs. Like they're absolutely fucking wild. They tend to be hyper-focused on a single purpose if they're going to be clockwork. They're clunky and mechanical with gears, springs, cogs, and ticking parts. They're made of shiny metals. If you're looking for the steampunk aesthetic, this is the place to look, is clockwork constructs. As far as creators go, common culprits are artificers, gnomes, and other crafty sorts of NPCs. The clockwork creatures tend to have a decently high AC and good constitution. Expect them to be found waiting as guards or set loose to cause destruction. And they'll be and that's what they do. That's all they do. When it comes to the next subsection, it's a little bit strange. These are animated constructs. There are 30 of them that are listed that I could find up to CR11, but most are CR1 or lower. These are objects that have been infused with magic to perform tasks and follow commands. If there's no command, they just do the last task they were given over and over again. Think about the brooms in Fantasia with Mickey, right? When he was the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and the brooms just keep doing their thing over and over again. They don't stop.
You mentioned broom, and I just had like trauma from Strahd. Thank you.
Right.
Let's not talk about animated brooms, please.
I added a whole backstory to the animated broom in like Death House as well, which is just bizarre. For some reason, I love animated brooms, apparently. Animated creatures don't require air, sleep, food, or drink. None of them do. They also technically aren't killed. Once they drop to 0 hit points, that just dispels the magic that's on them because they've just taken too much damage to be able to perform their purposes anymore. So the spell just doesn't apply to them. Some animated objects may know languages and may be able to speak, even showing signs of sentience and personality, But this is all fake. This is just part of the magical programming that's put on top of them. A lot of people get them confused with awakened creatures. Animated are constructs. Awakened creatures when you take a beast or a plant and give it sentience. Animated is when you give mobility and purpose and commands to an item or an object. There are also a handful of quote-unquote flying creatures. As far as I can tell, these are just more animated creatures. There are only 6 of them, but like flying sword, flying dagger, flying rug, these are things that are traditional. Like we expect to see this in D&D. And they pop up all over the published adventures. They only range from like CR 1/8 to CR 1/4, so they're really fucking weak. They're really just kind of like little gotcha moments to make an area feel a little bit more magical or haunted or guarded or whatever. They're just set dressing, really. If you want something beefier, you'd look for animated. And then Eberron, Rising from the Last War, finally introduced to us in 5th edition the concept of living spells. In Eberron, there was a giant crisis that happened that wiped out a large portion of the map, and it is just this magical wasteland now where this magical cataclysm hit and everyone inside this area died. Nobody knows what it's about or where it came from or why it happened. But there were a bunch of weird side effects, like the landscape is warped, physics don't work the way you would expect, teleportation magic's weird in there, and some spells that were in the middle of being cast gained sentience and now move around of their own will. It takes an immensely powerful magic to imbue a spell with sentience, but it also gives them mobility and immortality from natural causes. They will not just dissipate on their own, even if the spell is cast has like a duration of 1 round or something. No, these will just last forever until you destroy them. They've got all sorts of damage immunities. Usually the ones it's based on, like if you've got living lightning bolt, it will be immune to lightning damage. It will make sense when you see these things moving around. They all have what's called magical strike, which just means that like when they hit you, it bypasses the or it's all considered to be magical hits, right? They mimic the spell that's cast. There are only 5.5 that are listed so far. They're all tier 1 or 2, but they give you a template on how to make your own living spell. The ones that they give us, I say 5.5 because they give you Unseen Servant, Burning Hands, Bigby's Hand, Lightning Bolt, and Cloud Kill. Think about these with sentience, malevolence, and mobility, right? Unseen Servant, Burning Hands, Bigby's Hand, Lightning Bolt, and Cloud Kill. And then in the Eberron lore under living spells, it teaches you how to make living fireball, which should just terrify everybody. So that's what we have for like the general rules. There are 3 other kinds of like subsections of constructs that we're going to talk about today. But like clearly the big one that we've already covered is golems, right? So before we get into the rest, let's grab our dice and roll. I got some questions.
3.
I got a 2. I'm not doing well today.
Am I going first with a 6?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Fuck.
You'd think that by episode 280, we'd have figured this shit out by now. So, Peps,
Yeah.
how do you feel about the fact that some constructs have souls, but others do not?
I think it makes sense if you look at the creator of the construct. Some are going to be more powerful than others. Some are going to have different abilities than others. So like if you're just looking at constructs, it might not make sense, but if you consider that they are made by somebody or something, that really brings into what their abilities are. So for me, that makes sense.
With the exception of some undead, they're the only ones that are like that, right? That some have souls and some don't. Every other creature type has, they all have souls. Even like plants that are not like creatures, they're like a monster to fight. Like a blade of grass has a soul that goes to the afterlife in D&D, but items don't. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like you've got to hone in a little bit closer, zoom in on what is this specific creature you're fighting. Kyle, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't have any complicated feelings on it, I guess.
I would like there to be some sort of, I'm always looking for consistency. I would like the idea of there being maybe on Mechanist or one of the really lawful planes, wherever the Modrons and Warforged and shit are like their souls come from. I wish it was just like a wellspring of souls that were there that you could then imbue into items, and then when the item dies, that soul comes back. Something like that, because
Mm.
The other constructs that are not actually constructs, but clearly deal with souls are the infernal machines from Avernus, where you plug soul coins in, and then the machine uses those as fuel, burning through that soul and destroying it as you go. So like there's clearly some sort of complicated relationship between machinery and souls, and I feel like if this was a novel, the author would have done a deep dive. Because it's D&D, we hand wave it. Don't worry about it. It's just a broom. Just move on. We don't need to know. But I feel like there's a plot hook in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, interesting concept. So are you talking like you might just get it's like the opposite version of the infernal machines, right?
Yeah.
It's not powering it to do some nefarious purpose. It is, I don't know, like good. Would regular people die and become part of this?
I don't
Or
know,
is
like-
it like reincarnation for constructs?
It's interesting to me because when you look at a lot of the different creature types, undeads, harvest soul, celestials, and fiends are all about souls. In my head, Fae do a lot of bargaining with people's souls as well. Like it's a thing. I would like there to be a construct version of maybe they try to intercept souls on the way to the afterlife just to put into their well. There's nothing evil or nefarious here. They just don't want you to go off to your final resting place yet because we're going to need you. And this is like your purgatory. We're just going to need you to help us animate other constructs for a little while, right?
Interesting. It's
Something like that.
It's the afterlife for people with Asperger's.
Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps do you have a unique plot hook or a tactic or some thought about a clockwork creature, some new inspiration?
Oh, I don't know that I have any new inspiration. I just love like the idea of gnomes and clockwork creatures because I love gnomes. So like just a whole village of gnomes working on like clockwork things, and everything that is not a gnome is a clockwork thing that's in there. Like they just have things that help them out in that. But like something's gonna go wrong, and one of them's gonna like malfunction or blow up or start like knocking things over. So I would just lead into that. I would think about a whole gnome village and all of the different clockwork things you could create in that.
Gnomes seem absolutely rife for that, for
Mhm.
clockwork. And I love the idea of like kobolds having just shittier versions of the same basic idea.
Yeah.
They're stealing the gnomes like clockwork.
And,
Yeah.
and they're breaking down and they've replaced
Yeah.
like springs with
Uh-huh.
like coiled up pieces of reeds and shit. Just they're doing their best, but it's not.
Mhm.
It's running out of oil. Mud is like oil. Use mud. Wait a minute.
That's
Kyle,
awesome.
any thoughts?
Okay, well, first building on that, I love the idea of a gnome village making a bunch of clockwork things. I also imagine them making a bunch of cuckoo clocks, like specifically. I would love to have that. Other than that, I was kind of thinking like a Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz scenario, right? Like you find one trapped underneath a rust monster or something, and it's just stuck there, and you got to figure out a way to get it help without allowing its body to dissolve.
That's fun. Like when you bring rust monsters into the conversation about constructs, like and a lot of the oozes that are acidic and things as well. Like
Yeah.
that's actually really when we start talking about Modrons and Warforged later, I'm going to be keeping an eye on these corrupting creatures that would absolutely be the bane of existence. You want to wipe out Mechanist, just open up a portal to and let a handful of rust monsters through, right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to think which adventure it's in. It's one of the more recent ones, where there is an entire adventure. I want to say it's in Dragonlance, which takes just like a break from the middle of the horrors of war to you just end up over with a bunch of gnomes, and the artwork is them throwing a clockwork chicken out of an upper window of a like gnomish hut down at goblins that are running away screaming. Clockwork creatures are so much fun, especially when you give them like because they're gonna get stuck in a loop and stuck in emotion, and
Yeah.
there's so much story you can tell with just that idea of they turn a corner and they don't know who was here last or why they're in this section, what the purpose of this dungeon or this keep or whatever is. And so they've got to piece together what are the clockwork things trying to do, but they can't do it anymore. Like if it's
Okay.
like a clockwork creature with hands that is clearly like rubbing their hands together, and you'd have to figure out that it's trying to wash dishes, but there's no water, there's no dishes, there's no basin. It's just stuck there pretending, like miming, picking up something and then trying to wash it with a rag that's disintegrated after the last 300 years. And it's still sitting there grinding through its gears, slowly working through, to the end of its life as it breaks down. Right. Like,
That's a fun idea.
yes.
I like that.
Sorry, I looked it up. It absolutely is in Dragonlance. It's relatively early. There's a D6 table called Clockwork Chaos as well. So it's just a mechanical chicken fires 10 eggs at the character. +4 to hit, 1d4 bludgeoning damage. On a hit, the egg bursts into an oily mess, and the character has disadvantage on attack rolls till the end of its next turn. This is fun gnomish clockwork bullshit, and I love it.
Yeah, love it.
Do you have any thoughts or inspirations or anything about animated constructs?
My first thought on it was like, okay, so there's the trope we all meet in a tavern, right? What if the entire tavern was made of animated constructs?
Oh,
Like,
that's cool. You want to go talk to the bartender, but you can't?
yeah, like everything in there is an animated construct, and like you don't know till you get in there, and then the door closes because it has a mind of its own.
And all it needs to, it has been commanded to feed the people there. And they're like, thank you, we're full. No, we need to keep feeding you. And now you have to fight the entire tavern.
Yeah, like every stool, every table, every cup, everything.
Hold on, I'm taking notes.
All the food has gotten rotten too, so it's like you don't want to eat it.
Yeah,
and they're just
like an
trying to poison
animated
you.
butter knife.
Yeah. That is such a different spin on the mimic colony as well. Like the idea of walking in and seeing like the whole room attacks you, but it's not mimics, it's just animated. And again, they're all low CR, right? However, the action economy is working against you on this. Some are bound to hit you, and you're going to die by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Kyle, any thoughts?
You know what? I love that idea. I was originally thinking like a Warforged Geppetto kind of thing, like it's just trying to create more of itself. It wants to become a father, but doesn't know how. So it's just creating all these like little tiny Warforged, hoping one day one will come to life. But I like Peps's idea better. That one is fucking great. Like a haunted Five Nights at Freddy's kind of thing.
I don't know. I like yours because I think it could be like weirdly tragic as your characters keep finding living dolls and like animated dolls that are walking around, and they're really like basic and rudimentary in early levels, but by later levels they're far more complicated and they have basic phrases they can say. And then finally and this is not a big bad, you just eventually get to the point where you meet this Clockwork Geppetto, who has to be better than the real Geppetto because he's a piece of shit human being and absolutely fucking moronic. And I hate Geppetto, but I'm not going to go on that rant again. I've done that multiple times on the podcast. We're moving on. But the idea of like how sad that is to like, I don't know how I got a soul, but I'm trying to make children so that I can have my own family. That's weirdly heartbreaking. And then the players realize that they've been destroying this creature's children for the last like 7 levels.
Oh, really put the hurt on them there. Yeah, because I was thinking like, after the war, the Warforged don't really have a purpose, so they look to flesh and blood creatures, and it's like, okay, what do flesh and blood creatures do? They procreate. So is that what I have to do now that I have a soul and free will?
I love the idea too of like hold on, we can be like the other organic creatures. You like turn the corner in the dungeon, you've been hearing the rhythmic clanging for the last like 20 minutes. You turn the corner and it's just 2 completely genderless, sexless Warforged just banging their center pieces together because this is how we procreate, right? Am I doing it, guys? Am I doing it? I like animated constructs a lot. They are a lot of like gotcha moments, but I prefer, whenever I use them, I prefer to use them when I've split the party, because suddenly that CR2 creature becomes scary. When you're a level 4 party, you will just walk right through that. When you're one level 4 character by yourself, you're going to take a couple of hits. I'm going to start to wear you down a little bit. It's not enough for you to blow the big spells in the dungeon, but it is enough for you to go, fuck, I got to use a healing potion, right? And I've only got 2 left, right? So animated constructs for me are a great way of applying attrition to a dungeon crawl. Do you have a unique plot hook or tactic about using like a living spell?
Um, when you were talking about the living spells, I was surprised that Mage Hand wasn't on there.
Yeah, we have Bigby's hand.
Yeah, I don't know what Bigby's hand the spell is. I've never used it. But like everybody has Mage Hand. Like, what if your Mage Hand just like got a life of its own? Like you cast it and all like it does not do what you tell it to do.
Bigby's hand is a 5th level spell.
Mhm.
It's got an AC of 20. It's got hit points equal to your hit point maximum. It has a strength of 26 and a dex of 10. And it doesn't fill its own space that it's in. But when you conjure it up, you can move it around with a bonus action on your subsequent turns up to a minute, up to within 60 feet around you, and then make it do a physical attack with a clenched fist, or push a creature with a forceful hand, or grapple something with a grasping hand, or get between another creature and you to like block with an interposing hand. And then you do more damage and more stuff at higher levels that you cast it at. So it's like Mage Hand, but way beefier and has some combat, effects to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's not Mage Hand. But I feel like you're right. Like, can you imagine like a swarm of mage hands, living mage hands?
Yeah, I like the idea of something happens and you have been using Mage Hand the whole time, and then like something happens and all of a sudden your Mage Hand is now a living spell and you
It like
just
flips
go to
you
cast
off,
it.
gets down on
Yeah.
2 fingers and walks away.
Yeah, like you go to cast it, assuming it will open that door, and it's like, I'm tired of taking this hit for you for these trap doors. So fuck you, I'm out.
Love it.
I love
Got
that. The idea of it like standing there and like crossing 2 fingers so it looks like it's crossing its arms and like shaking its head.
I'm just getting like Adam's Family and Thing
Yeah.
vibes off your mage hand now. That's fun.
Yeah, I was a little confused by these. Like, so what do they want? Like, what do they do with themselves all day? Are they just looking to inflict themselves on something?
Yeah, the idea is they don't need to eat or breathe or sleep or anything. And when they were introduced in Eberron, they just wander the wasteland, just existing until they come across living creatures and then they attack.
Yeah, because they have a charisma and wisdom. So, I mean, like, they're a little bit more than
They're sentient. They think, right? You might be able to befriend one of these.
Yeah. Would they go in colonies kind of thing? Could they form up like Voltron?
Jesus, could you imagine? That'd be nuts.
That'd be
A
terrifying.
colony of living fireballs.
Like one day the mountain just became a volcano and no one knows why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like that. Yeah, I was also, when I saw Living Cloud Kill, I thought of the Wheel of Time, where there's this basically a living madness cloud. It's called Mashadar, and it basically just like wanders around and like the howling winds drive you insane over time. And it's just like this malevolent force that just wants to kill everything. Doesn't matter who it is. So something like that could be kind of fun too.
Yeah, and I mean, like, they've only listed a handful of them, but there are hundreds of spells. Like, there's a lot of potential here. And I like thinking about stuff like living friends, which would just be an invisible charm that runs around and just makes people like other people. And then they
Cupid.
Yeah, kind of, for like a short period of time. Like, there's a lot of opportunities in some of the other spell schools. Most of this stuff is evocation, right? But like, I don't know. There's some spells that I think I would not do Wish. I would not do Wish.
No.
But like the angry sleet storm that is just moving through the region is just like this very small localized snowstorm that just keeps moving. Right? That feels Fey to me, right? Or when you're in the Feywild, there's just that one frozen path of destruction throughout the forest. Like, I don't know. I think that the living spells, there's a lot of potential in there to be creative as a DM.
Yeah.
So I guess that brings us on to the next part, which is, I think, you, Peps.
Disclaimer, I'm probably going to say a lot of things wrong.
That is all right. These are made up bullshit fantasy words.
So I have Modrons. Just as celestials are considered pure good and devils are pure evil, Modrons are pure law. They follow a very strict hierarchy and live their lives following orders so they may one day move up that corporate ladder. They live on the plane of Mechanus. Do you say Mechanus? Mechanus?
I
Mechanus?
honestly jump back and forth between it depending on
Okay.
the day of the week. I don't. The one of them is going to be.
I may say it both ways during this whole
I
thing.
always try to say Mechanus because no, I say Mechanus.
Mechanus.
I'm sure it's Mechanus now because it would be like mechanic.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
I
You
don't
got me. I will Google. You keep you.
Anyways. So they live on the plane of Mechanus, and follow their leader, Primus, maintaining order to the multiverse and upholding laws the mortal mind cannot comprehend. They only communicate really with those ranked directly above them to get their orders, and those ranked directly below them to give orders. They will carry out their orders with absolute obedience and efficiency, with zero morals or ego getting in their way. They don't have a sense of self and consider themselves part of the collective. They don't use I, but instead we or us. Now, they are considered constructs, but the way they are created and even die is not terribly construct-like. One piece of lore I found said they come from a liquid pool of pure order. When a Modron dies, they disintegrate and their energy returns to the pool and a new monodrone emerges from it. When that Modron died, one of the ranks under it will transform into the level it was, and so on, ranking up to make space for the new monodrone. So they just I think there's like a flash of light, and they change their form and are now a rank above themselves. Every 289 years, the Modrons will go on a great march across the outer planes on a sort of reconnaissance mission. The march is long and dangerous, and not many make it back to Mechanus.
Sorry, I'm going to pause you. I looked up the
yeah.
pronunciation, and I found it said both ways. So
Okay.
I'm just going to call it
Either way.
Mechanus, and we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Each Modron has its own stat block, and there are a lot, so I'm not going to break down each. I will say the monodrone starts at about an 1/8 CR, and I believe it goes all the way up to a CR 13 for the Hexton. Some similarities in their stats are they all get the disintegration feature, as I mentioned. When they die, they just disintegrate.
Yeah.
They all also have axiomatic mind. I think that's how you say that word.
Yep.
Where where they can't be compelled to act in a manner contrary to their nature or its instructions. So that is the two abilities across the board they all have. All right, so getting into each different kind, we start with the monodrones. They are essentially flying balls with limbs, is what they look like. They are pretty simple and can only perform one task at a time, and the message for that task can be no longer than 48 words. Then we get the duodrones, which are blocky little guys that supervise the monodrones and can handle up to 2 tasks. The tridrones look basically like walking upside down D-Force with 6 legs and what looks like 3 arms. They lead lesser Modrons into battle. The quadrones are like a flying box with a short bow. They serve as artillery and field officers in the regiments of the Modron armies. And then we get pentadrones, and this is where the shapes start to get a little weird. Before they were just pretty basic shapes. Imagine a walking starfish with 5 legs. These are like a manager of the working population. They can improvise in new situations. So unlike the other ones that just follow straight orders, these ones can sort of have a thought of their own to fix a problem. In the artwork, we see one looking very upset at a monodrone, and I just want to give that little guy a hug. He looks so sad. But this sort of pokes a hole in the thing about them only being able to communicate with ranks directly above them and directly below them. So, and that sort of, I think, goes like all of their jobs sort of poke a hole in that. Like this one's level 3, but it communicates with the ones under it, and so it would also communicate with level 1s.
Yeah, I feel like this is a
Yeah.
case of poor oversight and bad editing.
Yeah. They're like, this would be cool, but we're not going to follow it.
I
so
also
nobody
think
notices.
Yeah, I also think it's weird, like that they go on I don't know, pilgrimage every 289 years, did you say?
Yeah.
Like why that number? Shouldn't it be
Yeah.
like a round number, like a prime
That
number?
number just like bothers you that it's
Yeah, it's supposed to be order. Why is it like some random number?
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, so
Hold on.
yeah.
I don't know why, but 289 is 17 is times 17.
Okay.
So I don't know how that helps at all, but that is the only thing that I can think of.
17's not like
Yeah.
like a round number either.
Yeah, it's prime. Like this does not help at all. So I'm sorry for including that in this conversation.
It just leaves us with more questions. All right, so that is our base Modrons that we get from the monster manual. So now we're gonna look at the sort of hierarchy. These will all be getting a new feature called Combat Ready added to them that gives them advantage on initiative rolls. So they also have the other two that I mentioned earlier. The Decaton are now a large size. They are ball-shaped like the Monodrones, but have humanoid legs and feet, which really are unsettling when you look at the art.
There's a lot of unsettling art with these guys. You have not talked about their full, luscious, pouty lips.
I know.
Most of them. They're weirdly like someone said, give me a construct that I want to make out with.
Yeah, they do have some like Kardashian level lips.
Yeah.
So along with these humanoid legs and feet, they also have 10 mechanical tentacles sprouting from them.
Well, now we need to make out with them. There we go.
Yeah, they'd be a good time. They still have that one large eye like the Monodrones have, but they have 10 eyes total, so they can observe the operations of base Modrons, which is their main job, monitoring the base Modrons. So when your mom says that she has eyes in the back of her head, these kind of do. Except in emergencies, these can shoot bolts of electricity out of each eye. As a mom, I wish I had that ability also.
You can just get a taser.
My mom does have that ability. I get physical pain when she gives me that look.
The death stare.
Yeah,
the mom look. Yeah, we do at least, have that. But all right, so the nanotons are up next, but before I talk about them, I need to talk about a variant that is in the monster manual called the rogue Modrons. On occasion, a Modron can go rogue. This happens when there's a defect in them or they were exposed to chaotic forces for a long period of time. These Modrons do not follow Primus's law and often break them and disobey orders, sometimes even becoming violent. So that's all important because the Nanoton's job is to hunt down these rogues. They also interrogate trespassers into Mechanus. So if your party goes wandering into there, they are likely gonna come up to one of these guys and be interrogated. They have like a long worm-like body with 9 mechanical arms and 1 sprouting out of the top of its head. Yeah.
That one's for high fives.
Yeah. So then we get the Acton. They have 8 mechanical tentacles, which they can spin around in a whirlwind to protect themselves, though their job doesn't really see a lot of combat. They are data collectors. They provide productivity reports to Septons and diagnostic data to Decatons. Septons, the only description given is they are easily identified by their 7 flexible limbs. There is a quote given by someone called Morty that says, "You ever notice how certain Modrons sort of look like some kind of wonky dice? So maybe they look somewhat dice-shaped."
So
But
so hold on, a little bit of context here. Mort
Mort.
is a floating skull,
Yeah.
and he is the one that the bestiary is named after. It's Mort's planar parade.
Okay.
And he gives context like Tasha does all the way through it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's
It was.
a floating skull with eyeballs.
Yeah.
And sarcastic as all fuck. So
Yeah. It reminded me of like the Fizbin quotes.
Yeah.
That we see. Yeah. But however they look, their job is to record the activities of the base Modrons in each of the plane's sectors to ensure operations are in perfect order. And that brings us to hextons. These are now huge constructs and are described as having solid frames with 6 shining flanges. They have a pair of arms and tentacles that both end in powerful pincers. They are field generals 4 when the Modrons fight against the forces of chaos. The hextons lead the others outside of Mechanus, most notably in the Great Modron March.
So do you know why the naming convention changes? And did you notice the CR changes pattern as well on this?
A little bit. I didn't look too deeply into the but it does go, I mean, it goes from a quarter to a 13. So, or not a quarter, an eighth to a 13. So like
yeah, but it goes in power, it goes, monodrone is 1, duodrone is 2, right? And so it goes up to 5.
Yeah.
But then the next most powerful one is the Decaton, which is no longer called a drone, right? Because it's monodrone, duodrone. Now they're Decaton. And it is the next most powerful. And then it starts to count down the higher it goes. To Nonaton is 9, Octon is 8, Septon, and Hexton is CR13. The reason for this is the drones operate in the millions. And I found these numbers and I thought that they were really kind of crazy. The monodrones, there are over 300 million of them in existence. The duodrones are over 55 million. Tridrones are 6 million. Quadrones are 1.5 million. And pentadrones are 500,000. But then when you get to the Decaton, there's only 100 of them that exist. For the Nonaton, there's 81. For the Octon, there's 64. And if you're a math nerd like me, you'll recognize that the Decaton, there's 100 of them because that's 10 times 10. And that's why they're called the Decaton, right? And so when you get to the Hexton, there's only 36. So there are 36 generals, I guess, for all of Mechanus. But what we don't get in 5th edition is that there's also a Quinton, and there's only 25 of those, a Quarton, there's only 16 of those, and it just keeps going. And there's a Tertian, only has 9, Secundus only has 4, and then Primus, which is 1 by 1, and that's why he's the leader, right? So yeah, it took a little bit of internet digging for me to figure that out, but I'm a math nerd, so it made me smile to do that. But that's why there's like a weird break in the population base. Like there's drones, and then there's these guys, right? And they're very different. So I don't know. I wanted to point that out because you'd think that like the 10 would be higher than the 9 in CR rating, and it isn't. It's the other way around. So anyway, sorry I went off on a math. Do you have anything?
Yeah, that's what I got. That's all of them.
The Modrons are not particularly complicated, but they do have very set specific roles within their own society, which is a lot of fun. Let's grab dice. I have questions.
All right. 4.
6.
Natty.
Oh yeah? All right.
Yeah.
So Kyle, you're up first. Any role-playing inspirations about these guys?
Oh, boy. I mean, very dry, I guess you would play them. This one's kind of tough for me.
Yeah, it depends if you look at them like they're just lawful robots that are stuck in the cog, or if they are citizens with their own, like, do these guys get downtime? Do they go home to their families? Are they capable of love? And like the drones aren't, right? Like they have one task they can do over and over and over again.
Oh my God. A star-crossed lovers kind of plot hook where it's like a Decaton is in love with a Nonaton, but it's forbidden.
It's forbidden.
Or
they're just hoping that somebody dies so they can rank up.
Yeah.
And that's why they keep trying to murder their superiors. I do it for love.
That's when we get the rogues.
Yeah. Honestly, role playing a rogue Modron, I think would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like fuck authority, burn it all.
The anarchist of Modrons.
Yeah. Just with a mohawk, a leather jacket with a bunch of studs on it.
I have seen Short Circuit too. I know how this plays out.
Yeah.
I I actually really like Modrons because they're really flavorful as like a servant class as well that I can use for like, because my world is just a mishmash of all these concepts. And they recently ran across a gladiatorial like arena, which was supported by all of these Modrons that were in there. And there were these holes in the side of the walls, these small holes where Monodrons would just roll through tubes and pop into the next room and like take your order and then fuck off to the kitchen to then come back and fill the order, right? And so they were like little butlers. You would ring a little bell and then the door would open on the side of the wall, this little circular door, and a Modron would come tumbling through. I think that they're really flavorful and neat, and I love them. But when it comes to role playing, the drones are one note, and I feel
Yeah.
like everything else, the tons, for lack of a better, the sexton and octon and all that stuff. All these they have personalities. They've got bigger concepts to worry about and more things to think about than just my one or two tasks.
Yeah. Even still though, like I just don't imagine there being much, like they're still just bureaucrats, right?
They're middle management, don't they? They
Yeah.
feel like middle management until you get to the Hexton, who's a general, right?
Yeah. Like my sort of what popped in my head is in Monsters Inc. that like secretary
Yeah,
who's like
yeah.
very monotone and just doing her job.
Well, okay, that would be really cool. Is what if you would like wipe the mind of a like duodrone, for example, and then give it to the party as a blank slate, and like you can every long rest give it replace one of the commands that it has up to 48 words. You can replace it every long rest so that you can reprogram this thing and it just follows the party around as like a helper.
Mhm.
So you would have like a sidekick that's a very simplistic, basic sidekick, right? Something like stand guard, and also let us know if something shows up, because stand guard could just be, I'm a guard, I stand, right? Like you'd have to be very specific and very literal.
Mhm.
I think that would be kind of fun to role play.
I love like that idea, and like every so often there's a flash of light and it transforms into something different. Because it's like
it starts to like,
it's moving up the ranks, like
yeah. Actually, it's really cool. And then like you've got to go find, because they will be having a war against, I don't know, I think it's Slotty are their arch nemesis, right? The Slod and Modrons, I believe, are the ones that fight. So like you could stumble into a war in tier 3 or tier 4 and be like, oh, that's why our guy keeps leveling up.
that's why it keeps changing.
I would totally give that as a sidekick to a artificer. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you have any exploration hints for these guys?
Exploration. I really like the idea of coming across their great march, right? Like you just find this trail of wasted Modrons. Well, I guess you wouldn't find wasted Modrons, would you? Because they just turn to dust.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they disintegrate.
you would find a bunch of dust. I assume though when they die, they turn to dust, right?
Mhm.
Well, if there's a war and they lose limbs, but they're still alive, would the limbs still be there? Would you find little springs and cogs and like severed mechanical fingers?
I don't know. Or would there be like, that's what the monodrones do, is just go behind them and pick up all the pieces so they can piece them back together.
Just little brooms.
Yeah, like the monodrones would be the medics of the army.
Yeah.
Well, look, there's 300 million of them. Like they're foot soldiers too. You guys go fight, and you guys, the ones we painted the giant red cross on the back of, you guys go pick up the pieces.
Mhm.
Every once in a while, you see one, like he's got the saddest job ever, and it's like a dustpan and a broom, and he's just cleaning up the ones. We're running around with a fucking Hoover vacuum, just cleaning the battle. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Yeah, I don't know, for exploration for these guys, I don't see them being stealthy by any means. Like you will know when there are Modrons around, they're clanging their way down the hallway, right? They don't care until you start to get to the higher level ones where they have a specific command to say, be stealthy, right? Yeah, like they gleam. They're bright, they're gleamy. I think they move in packs, right? Like it's rare you're gonna find one.
Yeah. I mean, some of them go out like into different realms and stuff to sort of keep an eye on things. So you might come across like one that is,
But it'd be a higher level one, right? I was saying.
yeah, it would be more of a higher level, I think.
Yeah. Or they're trying to be stealthy, but they just have no concept of what that is. So it's like carrying around like a stick in front of it with like a little bit of foliage and like thinks it's camouflage. You can't
Yes.
see me.
Mhm.
that they only see in black and white.
Uh,
Yeah, it's hard to come up with exploration for these guys because I feel when it comes to Modrons, you're either searching them out or they're searching you out. You probably don't
Yeah.
stumble upon these too often just out in the wild.
I do like
Yeah.
the idea of like the ones that are out in the realms, keeping an eye on things, because you are, of course, going to have somebody chaotic in your group aligned. And so they are going to be like taking notes.
Yeah.
And like to report back, you know? So you just like see a little robot behind a tree taking notes to report back to their like upper people to see if you're a problem and they need to send more after you.
And then like it's out in the world for too long and it starts to ask the question it's never supposed to ask, which is
Mhm.
why?
Mhm.
no.
Yeah, because like that's how the rogues happen, is if they're around chaotic forces for too long. So like if your group is all chaotically lined, like that spending that much time around you could start to change it.
When they turn to dust, does everything they're carrying turn to dust too? Did it say that?
I don't recall. I may have said it, but
Because
I don't remember.
that would be an exploration thing. Can you imagine a battlefield just covered in dust and weapons?
Hmm.
That would be really unnerving. There's no bodies, there's no blood. It's just weapons and dust. And I guess like the odd like slod corpse, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good piece of imagery right there. Kyle, do you have any combat inspirations about these guys?
Just there's not going to be a lot of subtlety in combat with these things, right? They're going to go through force and numbers. I mean, especially with the lower ones like Modrons, they're just going to like dog pile you kind of thing, right? There's no sense of self-preservation. There is only the mission.
Do you think that there's a big old factory that just churns out more Modrons?
Yeah,
Like
a little bit.
more Monodrones, just like because you would only need one mold repeated a bunch because they all get promoted, right? You never need a mold for a duodrone. You just need the Monodrones.
One of the things that I found when I was, because I don't know that like each edition might have their own like lore on how things are created, but that it was believed that there is only a certain amount because one dies, a monodrone is created. So there can only be a set amount. So they can't just like crank them out continuously.
No, but if you go off to war and the Monodrones are dying by the thousands, are we just cranking out the replacements? Is that?
I mean, like as one dies, one pops up. But like back in Mechanus. So
Oh my
like they
God.
all get replaced back home.
Yeah. Can you imagine? That's my creepy exploration thing is you walk into the storage facility where they have literally millions of Modrons that have not woken up yet. And they're all just in stasis waiting for the next one to die so this one can open its eyes and start its process. So you would walk into these Modrons that have been built but don't have life yet. So it's just empty husks.
I think you would also like if you were anywhere near that battle, when they rank up, it's like a flash of light. So there would just be flashes of light. Every time one dies, one ranks up next to it.
It'd be like the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's crazy because the Hex and the General, you finally kill the General and think, hey, we did it. And then another one just appears beside it. Holy fuck, that's actually way scarier and existential than I realized.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. This is a real powerhouse. You would have to kill every single one on the battlefield.
At once.
Yeah. Fight down to the last man. Like, that's crazy. That would, and you know what? And they would know it. That would be the tactics. Overwhelming numbers. Right? Because we are talking about the millions, right? So they would, I think that's fucking phenomenal. That's great.
It would also be crazy to be back in Mechanus, seeing all these like, because there has to be so many in each rank.
Yeah.
So if they're getting wiped out super fast and the monodrones are coming out, they're coming out as monodrones and then immediately duodrones and then immediately tridrones. Like they are ranking up as they're coming out to replace.
Oh, that would be so crazy. That is
Interesting.
some imagery that I would love to play with in a campaign. That's how you show how scary the enemy force is, right?
Mhm.
Okay, if they're all coming out like super fast and they have to be reprogrammed essentially every time they are born, is there someone just standing at their little creation point just yelling orders as they come out, like just talking as fast as humanly possible? Hey, you gotta go there, just gotta get there, like an auctioneer, just
They
giving
just
orders.
like have signs.
I would
Yeah.
I would assume that it would be built into the waking up process. That they would someone look, the dude that hauls water just died. We need a new
Mhm.
dude to haul water. Kick up that guy. Just spin up the next one with the haul water code, right? It's only going to become more complicated when they start to rank up too quickly. And they're like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I still only have the haul water thing.
Yeah.
And I'm now a tri-drone.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Right?
You're gonna be
Again,
hauling 3 times the water.
then again, like Primus is essentially a god, so he could snap his fingers and just make this shit work too. So
Yeah.
True. Okay, so you said when they died, they all go back to a central thing, right?
Yeah,
well,
like
don't
they
go.
all come
Sorry, they
they
don't go
come
back,
back.
right? Like if that one dies, it's dead.
Yeah.
A new
Yeah.
one's created at the central hub. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was like they
Well,
all.
in the one lore that I found, which again there is several different like tellings of it. Let me see exactly what it
The
said.
general rule for lore that I have found is
Mhm.
when you're trying to parse what is still effective, 5th edition gives us so very fucking little that whatever we do get should be definitive if we're playing in 5th edition. 4th edition was a departure. It said ignore everything else that happened beforehand, but then when 4th edition ended, they were like, never mind, ignore 4th edition. So
Mhm.
you don't use anything for 4th edition except the Raven Queen.
Yeah.
3.5 and 3rd edition were so inclusive and intensive. There's a lot of info out there to grab from. AD&D had a lot of stuff to grab from, but like original basic D&D was so just like 8 guys in a basement going, I don't know, man, give it horns, that you can ignore that shit too. So I tend to only look at 2nd edition, 3rd and 3.5, and 5th edition.
Yeah.
And if
And
there's
in
anything that
5th
conflicts,
edition and like in the
Yeah.
monster manual, it did not really say how they were created.
yeah,
I found
Okay.
this one the most interesting, which is why I included it. So it says that when a Modron dies, they disintegrate and their energy returns to the pool of pure order, and then a new
Okay.
one emerges from it.
so it's like
Yeah.
they have souls, but it's not called a soul.
Yeah, it's their like energy source.
That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for constructs earlier. I wanted there to be like a well, a pool of, and they've got this. So love it. It's great,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I really liked that one. That's why I included it. 5th edition did not really say, it just said they were created like Primus creates a new one. Like
Yeah.
it didn't really give how. So I liked that this said sort of how.
Yeah,
And I liked that concept of there's just a pool that they emerge out of. So
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
they die, their energy goes into the pool, a new one comes out.
yeah, that's
I
right.
was thinking that like very literally. So I was thinking
Mhm.
like there's just like a pool, like I don't know, like a silver pool kind of thing. And now I'm just imagining a bunch of Modrons around it, like reaching in and like taking a scoop out and then plopping down this liquid, and it just goes and then reconstitutes into a monodrone.
Like the
Oh,
Terminator.
like nanobots almost.
Yeah, almost. But
That's-
more cozy fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah, but yeah, that's cool. I like that. Sure, fuck, why not? I like that
Yeah.
too. It's all good.
You know what? I think if you are exploring this part of the game, like get creative and as flavorful as fuck, like
Yeah.
go all in. Make it weird.
So, one of the things before we move on to the Warforged that I want to touch on again really quickly is like we have this hierarchy of
Mhm.
Modrons, but Primus oversees more than just Modrons. He's the leader of the Modrons, and he's the overseer of Mechanus or Mechanus, however you want to say it. But
I'm pretty sure Mech Anus was the original name of the McRib, but it didn't focus group very well.
well, yeah, now they have do they still have the Angus burger? Is that where we split off? Was never mind. Anyway, the idea with Primus though is that he oversees other things. And one of those things that he oversees is the Hall of Concordance in Sigil. This is a Planescape thing. And Sigil is the city of doors that sits in the very center of a hub of a whole bunch of different portals on an outer ring. So the Hall of Concordance makes sure that everything is in balance and really embodies the idea of lawful neutral. He then created a series of creatures called the Inevitables. We only get stat blocks for 2 of them in 5th edition. One of them we've already covered, and that's the Merit. The Merit is the CR25 huge-sized, like, massive enforcer that is, and we went off about it, absolutely fucking terrifying. It doesn't look like it has a head. It just has a giant, like, what looks like an eye in the middle of its chest, but it shoots an energy beam out of it. And otherwise it looks like a giant metallic, like, gladiator body. But these powerful constructs, they live in the Hall of Concordance in Sigil. And the idea is that there's something called the Kolurut. And the Kolurut is a massive construct that is far bigger than just, like, it's like a gargantuan size. It's absolutely fucking massive. But it oversees all contracts and agreements in reality. We don't get a stat block for it, but what we do get is a stat block for the parts of it that break free from the main core of it. These are also called Koluruts, and they're medium-sized, vaguely humanoid, but they've got 4 arms, each holding a sword, and they're CR20 metallic-looking beings that are dispatched to go out into the multiverse and learn what the absolute truth of the universe is to determine if a contract has been broken. And if anyone gets in their way of determining this, they will then fight to the death. And so once they have succeeded in their mission, they report back to this Hall of Concordance, and they can just plane shift their way there. The Merit is the CR25 enforcer that hunts down the people that have broken it. So the Kolurit are like the lawmakers and the investigators, and the Merits are the law enforcement. But the damn thing is that both of these Inevitables have melee attacks, and I think all Inevitables do. They have melee attacks as part of their, like, multi-attack. So they can do many of these attacks that do not need to roll to hit. They automatically hit. There's no roll for it. And that is part of the idea of being the embodiment of lawful neutral. We know how that there's no chaos. We know how this works. The order is when I go to hit you, you get hit. And it does this amount of damage. And the fact that you can get that off, and it's like, it's an insane amount of damage. She was like 60 points of damage, I think, with the Merit's 2 slam attacks. So it gets within reach of you and decides to do 120 damage. You're done. That's its turn. Bang, bang. Unerring hit. Your AC no longer matters. And they are a part of this whole landscape of order and whatnot as well, which makes me think that Primus is super fucking powerful because we don't get any other creature that can do an auto hit. So I guess except maybe if we had a living spell that was Magic Missile. That would be an auto hit creature. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out because while we only get 2 of the stat blocks in 5th edition, Inevitables are damn scary. And I used a Merit in my campaign, my last campaign when my guys were CR 18, I think, or they were level 18, and I whipped this thing out and it fucked them up so badly. Just that auto hit scared the shit out of them. So love them. I think they're loads of fun. Keeping the same initiative, how do you guys feel about the Inevitables?
I have some complicated emotions around them. Like, I like the idea of it and I like the flavor of it, but I find them as a concept to be kind of strange, right? Like, for some of them, they're robots that were created to enforce the laws of nature, right? Like, you live too long, that's it, I'm taking you out.
No, it's specifically contracts and agreements. Think about it like a court system.
Yeah.
So, and like the Koluruts are judge and jury and lawyers, and the Merits are the bailiffs, the actual guards.
Okay, I was reading about the lore from 3rd edition on it, and it said like the other ones have different things, but in terms of those, I like them a lot. I think they're very cool.
Yeah, I think they got rid of the weird, complicated, inevitable shit from 3.5. This is where they started to have so much material it needed to be pumped out every month that we started to get a lot of discordant ideas, and things started to become hypocritical and redundant and just stupid. by the time inevitables were created and introduced, there was like one core concept, and then 9 other writers just needed to fill 15 pages. And so we got a bunch of shit. That's a lot of the late 3.5 stuff, which is why I will use fifth edition first. There's not much of it, but it's cleaner, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They have a very specific purpose in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're cool. They're creepy and terrifying, and like they're almost scarier than breaking a deal with a devil or a warlock, right?
Yeah, I feel like if you broke the deal with the devil and devil came for you, and you like, well, oh shit, I gotta run to the Celestials for help. The Celestials would be like, yeah, but you broke the contract. Let's go talk to the Colurate to sort this whole thing out.
Yeah.
Right? And pure law is just not going to be on your side.
Yeah.
Peps, how do you feel about the inevitables?
Yeah, I mean, as a DM, it is a fantastic way to keep your players like honest. Because you have the chaos players that are like, yeah, sure, I'll totally live up to my side of this contract. Guys, we can just steal this treasure. We don't have to give it back to them. Like,
and then like, can you imagine a merit shows up and just kills random villager number 3 and just you did not follow the contract, smash, you broke your word, and just pulverizes them, and then turns around and plane shifts out. Your rogue is going to go, fuck.
Yeah.
Oops.
I like how it's automatically 60 damage too. There's no rolling damage or hits.
Oh God, I just had going through a divorce that contract. These guys, like, there would be no divorce, and you cannot break that contract.
Or could you imagine being able to just enforce to the letter every single part of the divorce contract, right? Like, you absolutely have to pick up the kids by 8 a.m. on this day, and like 8:01, you're fucked. You would better be there on time.
Yeah. This is one hell of a prenup.
Yeah.
It's 60 force damage per each of the 2 hits for the merit. Is that still true in the and it's I got a reprint in the Monster of the Multiverse, so that's still true. And then the Inerring Blade does 24 force damage, but there's 4 of them for the Colurate. So that is immediately 96 damage if they focus on you. And there's not a damn thing you can do. And it gets to either disarm, it disarms you, you roll a d6 then after that to find out what thing that this blade also did. So on a 1 to 2, they drop one of the items that they're holding that the Colurate gets to choose, and it just happens. There's no save against it. It just knocks it out of your hand. Or on a 3 to 4, it's an imbalance. The target can't take reactions until the start of the Colurate's next turn. Or on a 5 to 6, you get pushed up to 15 feet away if you're large size or smaller. So like, these guys just fuck up a battlefield.
Yeah.
Don't fight an inevitable. Just do what they say.
Yeah.
Chances are good this is your DM just railroading your murder hobo ass to get you back into the fucking campaign. So let's swap gears for a minute away from Planescape and jump into Eberron. Kyle, what you got for us?
All right, I got Warforged. So during the last war on Eberron, House Caneth, who served as weapons dealers to the 5 nation hosts, out of all the weapons that they created, the Warforged were their greatest. They are tireless, single-minded soldiers crafted from stone, wood, and or metal, who carried out their orders unfailingly without question. After the war, the Warforged were set free and given rights equal to those of other sentient species under the Treaty of Thronehold. However, this turned out to be slightly traumatic for many of the Warforged, who were unaccustomed to living a life without orders or single-minded purpose. Many just took root, waiting, unsure of what to do after losing their only purpose in life, and hoping that someone might come along and tell them what to do next. After a while, and coming to terms with their new reality, and realizing that nobody was going to do it for them, the Warforged began to strike out into the world, hoping to find new meaning. Some searched the land, hoping to find inspiration, while others looked to each other seeking a leader from within their own ranks who might be able to give them their desired purpose. I didn't realize how many times I used purpose in like a row. I really should have looked at the thesaurus at some
Fine.
point.
I
The
always
problem
read
is-
my notes before we go. I read them all out loud. So then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I said that word too much. Yeah.
All right, look, if we can get 95 more patrons, then we can hire an editor in chief and we won't worry about this.
That can edit all of our notes before
Yeah.
we go on.
We'll have a proofreader on
Yeah.
staff. Yeah.
Good luck interpreting all of our thoughts. That'd be real fun for the times we write our notes 10 minutes before we go on.
Yeah.
Or just like I can only imagine what the notes look like for the Undead series. I'm pretty sure it's just a cartoon drawing of a dick, and then underneath that fucking Gregory, and that's
Mhm.
it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So some of them look to find a leader within their own ranks, and so many of them turn to the mysterious Lord of Blades, presumed former soldier, although nobody really knows his backstory, turned warlord, who has an unknown goal. But what is known about him is that he has broken all ties with his former masters and established a homeland for his people deep within the Mournland. Whatever path these Warforged chose, and despite the rights promised to them under the Thronehold Treaty, much of the world does not look very kindly upon them, seeing them as an uncomfortable reminder of the war and the destruction it brought, and believing that they should be removed from society and destroyed. In places like Karnath and Thrain, Warforged became indentured servants and were instructed to repair the damage from the war. And while no two Warforged are exactly the same, they do share a number of traits. They do not eat, sleep, or breathe, requiring only to remain motionless for 6 hours while still remaining fully alert. They are capable of experiencing the full breadth of human emotions, but lack the facial features necessary to display them. However, their crystal eyes tend to brighten and darken when experiencing strong emotions. Even still, war and military conditioning created the foundation of Warforged personalities. And as such, they understand duty, the chain of command, and conflict. Their hard early life as constant soldiers has accustomed them to endless toil, and so long periods of inactivity can make them anxious. A Warforged without orders or a task to complete will often create one for themselves to keep active. Individual Warforged will choose different hobbies, but the type they choose are often repetitive and can be unending, such as counting each blade of grass in an area, or continuously braiding a strip of material into patterns only to then unbraid them and recreate them into a new pattern.
That's that cyclical thinking again that constructs can get caught in, right?
Yeah. For many Warforged, their routines are inherited from the military and are not so easily undone. Some will repeatedly perform like weapon and equipment maintenance checks. Many do take an interest in crafting, sometimes to the exclusion of all else, happily creating all day and all night, or else trying to keep themselves busy while their companions sleep. What sets Warforged apart from other constructs, but also kind of binds them together at the same time, is their sense of shared history. Despite having served different nations in the last war, they all more or less had the same creators and were created with the same purpose in mind, and now kind of share the same strife in living in a new world that they were never really designed to have a place in. They're also susceptible to mind-altering magic and are capable of being repaired through healing magic as well as through construction magic, I guess, right? Like mending will help them as well.
Thank God that healing potions finally work, because they didn't do that in previous editions. It had to be the mending spell.
Yeah, which is actually arguably better because mending is a cantrip.
Yeah,
So
but
it's-
if you didn't have it, there was no way to heal. You were relying on another player to use up one of their cantrip slots to cast mending, or to have that as a known spell.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty messed up. But I mean, they have a lot of other advantages, right? Like they're all immune to poison. You know, they don't need to eat, sleep, drink, or breathe.
Oh, there's
And-
all sorts of reasons to
Mhm.
yeah, like I'm not shitting on Warforged. They're one of my favorites, but like
Yeah,
thank God they can use healing magic.
they just get all the good stuff. But yeah, that's basically Warforged, right? Like they have a soul, unlike most other constructs, and they are capable of free will. Although they tend to want to find a purpose, which is an interesting kind of combo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's true of your average human being too. Like, what's your purpose? What's your meaning in life, right? I just think it's really, really apparent with a Warforged as who's trying to find their place. And it's funny that they go into all of these details and it's good for world building. And I love having Warforged NPCs. But I feel like most Warforged adventurers are just like, my war never ended, and that's it. They haven't found a new purpose. Anyway, let's roll dice and talk about some inspirations.
17.
I got a 4. I've not rolled double digits yet today.
I got a 16.
You're our Casey.
You know what? There could be worse things. Peps, do you have any role-playing inspirations for Warforged?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could go with them depending on how far out from the war it is. Are they still in that wandering phase of trying to figure it out, or have they like developed enough into their own person? So I think like that's your first step.
The way that Eberron is written is the last war ended within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's that is the immediate setting of Eberron, but lots of people move beyond that. And so you're absolutely right. Like, traditionally speaking, they're still very much in that early exploration phase. But
if you're homebrewing and, have Warforge in it could be any amount of time after that. So I think like that's your first step when making an NPC is figuring out how far out from the war that it is. I really liked where they like get hobbies. Like that was my favorite part. Is they like find hobbies because like that's what we do to, deal with time and like being bored. Like I love that they do the same thing in a way and like have their own hobbies. So like I would make it like a shopkeep almost. Like they made everything in this shop is like because they had nothing else to do and they had so much of it. Well, I might as well sell this because that's money is a thing that apparently I need now. So let's
it's interesting. Like there's no need. They have no wants. They don't even really need shelter.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are no wants. The only thing they're doing is filling their time.
Yeah, they're just like trying to fit in. I want to see one that like knits things and you just go in and it's a shop of like knitted things. Because that's a very repetitive motion that they're doing over and over again. And they're just making things and then have them all. So they're like, here are things.
But it would be stuff that you normally wouldn't ever need knitted. Right? Like there's no toques or socks. It's going to be like, I don't know.
It's going to be weird stuff.
I knitted you curtains. Like, what?
Look, I knitted you a bookshelf. No, that's not how it works.
Kyle, do you have any role-playing thoughts about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much you could do with it. I love the idea of them having this horrible purpose, right? And now they don't have one. And yeah, I like the idea of how did the war affect them, right? And how does that reflect in their new hobbies? Are they just kind of a nihilist? Nothing else, nothing matters, do they want to make up for their time that they spent in the war, right? Like, do they have essentially like robotic PTSD? So now are they spending their time making toys for orphans that were made during the war kind of thing?
I feel like they're either really, really, really nihilistic or they're incredibly compassionate. And there's probably very little in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got the ones that have gone off with the Lord of Blades into the Mournland where organic creatures can't go, right? So that's their safe haven. What the fuck are they doing in there? Well, they're probably he's the Lord of Blades. I mean, they're gearing up for war. That's what they're doing in there. They're probably trying to get the factory back online or whatever. But then the other ones that are knitting for the rest of eternity, why would they do that? Like, it fulfills them, sure, but like there's got to be a purpose behind it, and that purpose might just be because the flesh bags get cold, and I like the flesh bags. Right. And so they would be that kind of compassionate. I have a Warforged NPC in my campaign. His name is Gladian. He is 10 feet tall and is covered in spikes that are built into him. and he is a grapple machine. Like his hands end in these massive metallic claws that are meant to just grab on and crush you to death. But he also has a shield built into one forearm and a sword coming off the back of the hand on the other arm. And so, like, he is meant for war, but he was built on the last day of the war. So he never saw combat. And when my players ran into him for the first time, he had literally been born yesterday and did not understand how the world worked. And so it was kind of a Frankenstein's monster situation where they were talking to Gladian and he's like, why do we pick flowers? Is that not a form of death? Why is this a happy thing? And just very innocent, but also every time combat breaks out, they're like, yes, Gladian, go kill. He's like, okay. And then just makes pink paste of the things that he was set loose upon. Like, it is a lot of fun to have that childlike wonder with the utter murder lust as well, right? So a lot of fun options for role playing with Warforged.
Yeah. I sort of got the idea of like Skynet and the Terminators. Like, what if the humans did win and there was just all the Terminators left? Like,
Yeah.
that's Warforged.
Yeah.
Like, trying to find we no longer kill people, so what do we do?
Yeah. I mean, Battlestar Galactica is probably a pretty good fucking inspiration for these guys as well, because they had machines, they had robots that were actually made of enough organic material they could pass as humans. And some of the times they didn't know they were machines, they were sleeper agents as well. So, like, what if all the Warforged that are sent out in the world, like, I don't know my purpose. Let me just go out adventuring. I'm with you. And then one day the Lord of Blade activates the kill mode on everyone.
Yeah. Order 66.
Order 66. Oh, the younglings. Kyle, exploration inspirations about these guys.
Peps actually won the
Peps, exploration inspiration about these guys.
I mean, I think you'd just find a lot of them wandering aimlessly, for a while, like if it's very soon after the war.
Yeah.
So it would be like weird things as they try to figure this out. So, like, gathering things for a house, but why do I need a house? But now I do, apparently, and not knowing what they need. So you would see them just like dragging something random and like, yeah, this is for my house, like, but
Just like carrying a door.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
when I get a house, I will need a door. I found
Yeah.
this door.
So I will keep it in my pile over here.
Yeah, I bet looting them would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Kyle, any exploration inspiration?
Yeah, I agree. I think you just find them all over the place. But I was trying to think of like weird scenarios that you might find them in. I was thinking about maybe they take up life as scarecrows after the war. All right.
When the scarecrow goes booga booga.
Yeah.
The Tin Man turns into the Scarecrow.
They would be great farmers, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Repetitive purpose. They do the same thing all the time. Tireless. They could constantly watch their fields. They make great shepherds too.
Yeah. They don't need to eat, so they wouldn't like have to eat any of the product that they're growing.
Exactly. And then for like a fucked up idea, I was thinking, you ever seen those like human-sized chessboards?
Yeah.
Like have that, but just a bunch of Warforged that are like, I don't know, killing each other to other people playing.
Yeah, instead of a gladiator, you have a wizard's chessboard, but like all the criminals have to pick up a piece. Like, it's up to you guys to win, but only one of you gets to, like, that'd be a really cool, I don't know, is a DM gonna play chess against the whole party for an entire session?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that scene in Harry Potter, right? Where they're
Yeah.
all on the back of one and taking swings at.
And the stakes were so high, like Ron is going to die and he just like gets up covered in dust and is like, I'm okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Fuck just happened. Oh, right, this is a children's show. My big thing that I want to think about when it comes to the exploration factor is I think about the tracks that things leave behind and how you would hunt them. And we got this a lot in previous editions, but not in 5th edition. You don't have to make them bipedal at all. You can give them 4 arms or mechanical wings, or it can have tank treads, or like, and there was a lot of that in previous editions. Now, 5th edition simplifies it so that we don't have to worry about, how our tank tread's going to climb a tree if it needs to, right? So it does simplify things. And if you're going to give a creature a Warforged wings or more arms, how does that impact initiative and all that shit? So there's a lot going into that. But for NPCs, I have no problem doing that. I think that's a lot of fun to have them be the bottom half like spider legs, right? And it has 6 like insectile metal legs off the bottom of it instead of just 2 humanoid legs, right? Or give it a tail with a weapon attack on it. These things were made. Give them whatever form you want them to. Forge them how you want. But keep in mind that they would have been forged for war originally, right? So how would their physicality then dictate what they would do in the real world? For example, if it had 17 arms that were like equally spaced all the way around in a circle, all the way around its body, this thing would be great for sorting things like mail or fruit or whatever. That would be great. Originally, it held daggers, but now it holds whatever needs to be. Would be perfect for a nursery, like dealing with babies, right?
Yeah.
Because all those little arms can pick up the babies, and I can rock this cradle while I can, hold a bottle to this one and, burp this one over here. Like, what would you do with these different forms? And Warforged just opened that right up. So I think that's what I like to think of with Warforged. Peps, combat inspiration?
I mean, originally you think like, well, they're built for combat, so they're gonna be very strategic and like go right into it. But I would like to think of them further in their lives when they've stepped away from combat, and that like combat comes to them, and having that moment of, do I want to do this? Do I want to get back into that life, or am I happy with what I have? Like
The identity crisis.
yeah, I would give them a
Yeah.
bit of a hesitation at first if they were like established into their own thing, to make it a little bit more interesting. Like maybe they try to talk their way out of it at first, which like is very surprising for your party, because you're like, you were built for this. like they have this ally they think is going to like be great, and they have this moment of like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, isn't this what you're for? That's racist.
Yeah.
Kyle,
You're
any
never-
combat inspiration?
You're never too young for a last war flashback. They're so like mutable that they could really fit in whatever kind of way you want them into in a combat situation. But what I was kind of thinking is like, how what made humans such great hunters were their persistence hunters, right?
Oh, I was gonna say laser scopes, but okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
that
think they
usually
had
helps
those.
me, but
But yeah, it's like stamina based hunters, right? Like these would make excellent bounty hunters. They never get tired. They're constantly following you, right? So how does your party try to evade a predator that never sleeps, never gets distracted from its task, right? How are you going to outwit and stay ahead of these guys?
This is like that the murder snail scenario. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Peps has no idea. It's a thought process. I think it came up on Reddit or Twitter or something originally.
It's one of the greatest Reddit feeds of all time.
I only look at Reddit to see what people say about my accent.
And the idea here is that if there is a snail that the moment it touches you, you will die. And it doesn't need to eat or breathe or sleep, but it moves at a snail's pace and it's always coming towards you. How do you live your life as long as possible? And everyone's answer is always, oh, I fly to the other continent on the other side of the world. Right. But it's still coming. And not today, not tomorrow, but it will catch up with you. So there was that's a whole Reddit thread, incredibly famous. But yeah.
Is that why old people go to Florida for just like the winter and then come back? They're just going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, it's the great migration of murder snails. Yeah. In like the middle of West Virginia, they're just confused snails in a loop. They just go back and forth every couple of weeks. When it comes to combat, for me, one of the things that I really like, and they touch on this briefly in Rising from the Last War, they have arm blades. So you can actually, if you're a Warforged, you can have a blade attached to your arm that like can be sheathed, then it pops out, and so you have consistently this blade on you. They took it to the next crazy level in 3.5, because of course they did, I was playing an artificer at that point, who was a Warforged, and you had like these empty compartments in his forearms where he would store wands, and then he would just want to use a wand, and he would open up the compartment, and that wand would just snap into his hand. He would cast a spell, and then the wand would go back into his arm. And so I love the idea of these compartments where it's never going to throw caltrops on the ground. It's just going to open the compartment on the back of its leg and drop it behind it as it runs, right? Like
Mhm.
I want to lean
Gadget.
in. I want to lean into that kind of shit. As much as they're not machines, they're organic creatures and they have souls. That's still so different than everything else. Other, playable races. I want to lean into that shit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. That would also make them really good card cheats.
Yeah.
They could just swap out the cards that they're playing.
You know what? That would be like one of the weird little idioms from Eberron. Like, you don't play cards with a Warforged, right? Like these little like pieces of colloquial wisdom. So yeah, I like that. Do we have any final thoughts on Warforged before we wrap up? All right, then let's cut to I asked that, and you guys both sit there silently for this audio medium. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, not really.
Also, whenever someone does the introductions at the beginning, they say my name. My first instinct is to always wave.
All right, let's cut to our last info break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/itsamimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
So, of all the different kinds of constructs we've talked about in this episode, which one inspires you the most as a DM and why?
Let's roll initiative, so maybe I can get double digits this time.
That's your last chance. 14.
4.
6.
Fuck. Peps.
Yeah. Probably the Warforge, because there are so many different directions you can go with them. Like Modrons are Modrons. Like they are very cool and there could be a lot of fun, but like I like spinning things into what you don't necessarily expect them to be. And I think you could do that with Warforge and them finding who they are. I think there's a lot of story you can tell there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, right? Like it's even the way they look is entirely dependent on you. Whereas the other ones are pretty like you're not going to have a different looking Modron or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like the living spells. The living spells are a lot of fun as well. But yeah, definitely in terms of overall choice, the Warforged is the best.
Well, yeah, because when you deal with like clockwork or animated or flying or any of that stuff, these are just features in dungeons or their guards or stuff. And if I'm going to deal with Modrons, I like Modrons, but I end up having to do Modrons for a few levels or for a few sessions anyway. So that like, because we're going to deal with Modrons for a minute here. That's the set piece.
Mhm.
If I'm going to get into the higher level Modrons or the inevitables or like, that's a campaign, right? Like that's the thing I'm doing for the next 20 sessions, right? It's not something I'm going to dip into unless I'm doing like a plane hopping. So that's living spells and Warforged are the things that I'm going to run into the entire campaign, right? They're so broad and you can use them both in very interesting ways. I don't think that any two interactions will be the same with any two versions of like when you run into different living spells or different Warforged, very different. And Warforged are by far the most, pardon the pun, fleshed out of all of them, right? So, Warforged are Dave's clear favorites, and he has waxed poetic about them more than once. It's why he wanted to do an Eberron series in the first place, which I guess, by the way, yes, go, if you haven't listened to it in a while, go check out the Touring the Multiverse series on Eberron. Dave fucking knocked it out of the park, and we talked about Warforged a bunch. But
wow, I'm sitting right here, dude.
But well, I think actually we haven't recorded it yet, but 10 episodes ago, you and Dave and Dan talked about Warforged playable characters. So They are the best. I like Modrons, but
Yeah.
Warforged.
I think they all have like their place. Like they're all
Yeah.
very usable.
Mhm.
But like
And
the
it's-
other ones will have a very specific place. Like
And I gotta say, in other kinds of role-playing games, not Pathfinder, because I almost had a D&D clone, but that's really reductive. But it's as close to D&D as any other system is. But most of the other
You'll get
systems,
a mob of people with pitchforks and torches. You see
it's
that
just,
kind of thing.
I'm pretty sure it's just Acid Dialogue, who's the only Pathfinder player who listens to this. But anyway, the other campaigns or the other game systems and whatnot, when you run into like mechanized enemies, it's the same flavor with different attacks, right? Or different armor class or whatever, but it's the same thing. Modrons and living spells and golems and the walking statues of Waterdeep and Warforged, they all feel so different, right? Construct just doesn't seem to, it's a big catch-all, and it's very, very different, right? Like one of the more, strangely enough, one of the more varied creature types.
yeah. Anyways, that's all for our discussion on constructs in D&D 5th edition. Please take a second to engage with a like, follow, comment, and review to help push our engagement. And don't forget to subscribe to find future inspirations for your campaigns.
If you'd like to support us, we have a store with some merch and a donate button on our website, itsmimic.com, as well as a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Also, I should warn you, Kyle, there's about a 5% chance that I'll have to get up and deal with a sick fiance. It's the day after the bachelorette party.
Is it sick? Is that the right word?
Sick to her stomach, maybe. The jury's out. I just force-fed Tim Hortons breakfast into her. It's all greasy. That should help, or it could do the exact opposite. So
Yeah, normally when I get like a greasy breakfast, it's like I'm guaranteed like a 2-hour nap.
she's back in bed right now. But if I hear the pitter patter of hungover feet, then I might have to jump out for a minute and check on that. It was just a beautiful mess last night.
Yeah.
So
No, it's so sad your country won't let me in, so I couldn't make it.
well, buy a passport and we can.
You know, in the middle of a custody battle is not the best time to buy a passport, I feel like. So
You know what? Fuck you and your logic. Stop making sense, Peps. I'm tired of this shit.
once the ink is dry on the papers, I will apply for a passport.
Tell you what, we'll come down to the States then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, when you said you weren't allowed in the country, I thought it was because you had a criminal record, maybe.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Maybe a little arson.
Mm.
They're just upset that she doesn't use regular airlines. She just rides her dragon across the border, raids a couple of small Canadian villages, and heads back.
They frown upon that.
Kyle, do you have any combat inspirations about these guys?
I do in 1 second. I just have to go to the bathroom, so I will be right back.
I cannot get through a recording without someone going to the bathroom.
I always go right before we start.
Yeah, it's half of the time when I'm like, yeah, I'm running a couple minutes behind. I'm like, I don't have my coffee yet. I don't have my water, and I haven't gone to the bathroom. I have my like pre-recording routine.
Mm-hmm.
And if we end up doing a like long recording where we're recording 2 back to back, that will fuck me up if I don't get a chance to go do that. Also, I'm always so hungry at the end of a recording. These take so much out of me.
I always forget to eat before we start.
Yeah, I'm so concerned about having my water and a hot drink.
Yeah.
Right? If I don't have a hot drink, I find my vocal cords start to tense up by the end of it.
Yeah. It's always like 30 minutes before we start, and I'm like, I should have eaten something.
Speaking of vocal cords, I will expect that none of the other ladies on It's a Mimic have any ability to speak today. Mieka is a horse as all hell. The sheer, like, they went clubbing, which is like a part of it, but the
Mhm.
sheer amount of screaming Disney songs for 40 minutes in the car on the way home, just the absolute volume. And it was they rolled down the windows and cranked up the music, and I'm like, this is fine on the freeway, but you know that when we get into residential areas to drop you guys off, I'm not going to put up the noise complaint. The windows go up or the volume goes down. And they were like, Adam, we will fucking kill you. Do not touch the radio. All right. Fuck.
Was there a particular soundtrack that they were going to, or was it just like,
We
top
found
hits?
We found the Spotify playlist of the 100 best Disney songs of all time, but the problem was they replaced a lot of the songs with the live action versions instead of the original classic cartoon stuff. So all of the Aladdin stuff was like Will Smith, and like we weren't having any of it. So so they were bouncing around from Frozen to Moana to the original classic Little Mermaid was on there. They didn't do the remake, but anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Combat inspirations, Kyle. I thought this was going to be a short episode, and then there's just a lot to talk about. Okay.
Adam, literally every time you say this is going to be a short episode, it's like a 2.5 hour. I need you to stop saying it.
All right. I'm going to declare these will be long episodes from
They will all be long episodes. But also, if you look at the breakdown, there's like parts where like this is going to be 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, stop it. It's only ever a short episode if Terry or James is on it, because they do not put up with the bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay, see you next time.